Hi, in this video, we will look at how to graph a slope-intercept equation of a straight line. First, we need to understand what is the slope-intercept form of a line. Well, it is a kind of an equation that you can put together to describe how the line will look like if you graph it. So it's a form of equation of a straight line given its slope. So you need your slope. You need the slope of the line in order to write out the equation in slope-intercept form, and also the y-coordinate of the point where the line intersects the y-axis, so which is the b in the equation. So that this form is a form that we call the slope m intercept b form. So again, y equals to mx plus b is a way that we can write out equations for straight lines to define them and also to graph them. And in this video, we'll look at how to define the line using that form and how to try to graph it from the given equation. Now, what if we're having a graph of a line, a straight line like that, and we were asked to write out the equation of this line using the slope-intercept form. Now, before we start, as long as the question says what form that the equation have to be written in, we need to write out the form so we're able to see what information that we need for the equation that we can conclude from the graph. So y equals to mx plus b. We know m is the slope. We know that b is the y-intercept of the point where the line intersects the y-axis. This is the y and this is the x-axis. So that is the y-intercept. Okay. Well, looking at the graph, it's so easy to conclude the b. So this point is 0 and 7. So it's a 0 and 7. The y-coordinate of the point where the line intersects with the y-axis is 7. 7 here is the b, the value of the b that we're looking at to plug in the equation. So far our equation looks like y equals to mx plus 7. 7 now is the b. Now the missing part that we still have to calculate would be the m. M is the slope of the line. To find the slope of the line, we have to use a formula. M, or the slope, equals to y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. What does that formula mean? It means that we need to determine 2 points on that line. Each point, of course, will have a y and x and a y and x values. Find the difference of the y's for 2 points and find the difference of the x's for those 2 points and divide the differences, and that will give you the slope of the line. So from the graph, it is easy for me to plot 2 easy points on the line. One of them is 2 and 3. See, the line goes through this point. So let's label that as point 1, P1, point 1, and that is 2 and 3. So what I basically done is I defined 1 point from the graph that I know, and I'm sure that this point went through, and 2 and 3 is one of those points. Another point that was easy for me to define or plot on the line is this point. So that is point 2, number 2, and that is 3, 3 and 1, 3 and 1. Now, to find the slope, the easy way I find it is to label the coordinates. Since the formula itself calls for coordinates to be subtracted and divided, I like to also label them as x1 because that's point 1. So this is x1 and y1. That's point 2, then that's x2 and y2. This way, I am able just to plug in the values in the formula, and that's it. Okay, let's do that together and see how that will turn out to be. So again, we're still looking for m equals to y2 is a 1. 1 minus y1 from here is a 3 divided by x2 is a 3. And then minus x1 is a 2 equals 2. Now subtract bottom and up and top. 1 minus 3 will give you a negative 2. 3 minus 2 will give you, of course, a 1. Negative 2 over 1 is itself negative 2, and that is the value of m. And this is the last thing that we needed to write out the equation. So our equation for the line that defines this line is y equals to negative 2x plus 7. So again, in that question from the graph, we were able to define the b that we need for the equation and the slope, defining other 2 points and calculating the slope according to this formula. Let's look at a practice question, and we can read the question together, think about what they need us to do, and then you can pause the video, do the question yourself, and then come back and replay the video to compare your answers. And here's the question. Write the equation of the graphed line in slope-intercept form. So basically the same thing. You are given a graph of a straight line, but they want you to put the equation in terms of the slope-intercept form. Okay, let's do the question together. So the first thing I need to do is write out the equation, the slope-intercept form, so I would know what information I need. Y equals to m, the slope, times x, the variable, plus b is where the line intersects the y-axis. That's y and that's x. Okay, from the graph, it is easy for me to say, well, the line intersects the y-axis as 0 and 6. So now 6 would be the b. I'm done with the b. Now I need the m, the slope. I can use that point as point number 1, for example, or I can find another 2 points and work with them. So let's do another 2 points. You can do, after the video, you can use that point, the y-intercept point, as one of your points on the slope formula. It will give you the same answer if you do the right math. So let's define an easy point. I see 1 and 1. That is easy to determine on the graph. 1 and 1, that is point number 1. And then another point could be 2 and negative 4. That is 2 and negative 4, and that is point number 2. Now, because the slope formula m equals to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 calls for those values, it's easy for me to label my coordinates before I go ahead and plug in the numbers on those in this formula, so I do avoid mixing up the coordinates. If I do y1 minus y2 and then x2 minus x1, that will give me the wrong slope. I need to keep the order. If I'm going to start with y2 minus y1, then the bottom part has to be y2 minus x1. You can switch. You can do y1 minus y2, but then on the bottom you have to do x1 minus x2, and it should give you the right answer. So point 1 that is x1 and that is y1. Since this is point 2, x2 and y2, simply plug in the values, subtract, and then divide. So y2 is a -4 minus y1 is a 1 over x2 is a 2. And then minus, we have a 1 for x1. Subtract -4 minus 1. -4 minus 1 is not a 3. It is a -5. And then 2 minus 1, of course, is a 1. -5 over 1 is itself. So the slope is -5, and that is the value of m. So we can just write out the equation of that line as y equals to -5x plus 6. Let's look at a different kind of question. Now, let's say that you need to graph a given equation. So in the past two examples, we have been given graphs of a line, and we were to conclude or come up with the equation of that line in the slope-intercept form. Now let's do the other way around. What if they give you the equation of the line? The equation provided is y equals to 8x minus 3. How can you graph that from the information given about the slope and the y-intercept? So now, as you know, to graph a straight line, you need at least 2 points that the line goes through. If you are able to define any 2 points on that line, you can just connect them with an edge or a ruler, and that would be your graph for the line. Now the question is, how can we come up with those 2 points? Well, one point I know I'm able to get straightforward from that equation is the y-intercept point. I know where the line intersects the y-axis. And that information I'm going to get from the b part of the equation. Remember, y equals to mx plus b. So b is a 0 and b in terms of a point. So that tells me that this line will go through 0 and -3. And remember the negative here? That will make you make the b -3, not a +3. So the first point I'm able to plot on my plane would be 0 and -3. Now I need a second point. Basically, if you have the equation of the line, I can pick any random value of x, plug it in this equation, and then solve for y. So let's pick any random value of x. I'm going to pick 1 because 1 is easy to deal with. So I'm going to do, let's say, f x equals to 1. Then what? Well, then y equals to, since it's 8x, then 8 times 1, because now x is 1, and then -3. Evaluate the expression on the right-hand side of the equation, and that will give you the value of y. 8 times 1 is a 1, -3. Then 8 minus 3 is a 5. Then this is the y. I defined the x earlier, so I can put the point together as 1 and 5. So another point that this line will go through is 1 and 5. So 1 and 5 is here. All I need to do is to connect the line. That's it. And this is the line that represents this equation. Let's look at a practice question, and let's read what is given and what is asked of us to do. We'll graph the equation y equals to -3x minus 3. The graph actually has the line that shouldn't be there, but let's assume that we do not see that line. How would you graph? So now you need a graph paper or a grid, so you're able to draw your x and y axis. You are able to plot 2 points on the on the coordinate plane, and then just simply connect them, and that will give you the line. So the equation given is y equals to -3 x minus 9. What are the 2 points that you're going to use to graph the line? You can pause the video, work on the question, and come back. Okay, let's do the question together. So the first point I'm able to easily conclude from the equation is the y-intercept point. It is 0 and -9 because b is -9. So 0 and -9 would be 1 point. The second point would be any random x that I can plug in the equation, and that will give me directly the y value of that point. So let's say I'm going to pick 1 again. You can pick 3, -1. You can pick any value of x that you wish to work with. So y equals 2, or I need to write that clearly, fx equals to 1. Then what happens? Y equals to -3 times 1 minus 9, according to that equation. Now, evaluate the expression. -3 times 1 is a -3 minus 9. -3 minus 9 is what? It's not a 6. It is a -12. So that will tell us that point number 2 is a 1, 1, and -12. So let's see if that will line up with the line that we have on the graph. So it is 1 and -12, and yes, if you connect these 2 points, you will come up with the graph of the line. Remember, if you have any questions, you can email, you can chat, or you can schedule an appointment with an instructor or a teacher assistant using the link below. Good luck in the exam.